join my live stream, guys, so we can discuss together as the game happens. We will be delighted to actually see that we are able to predict some of the Super Gems moves, and practically I think it's one of the best exercises for any chess student out there to reconstruct the Super Gems thinking process and actually increasing its own ability to understand more, to apply better, and to do better chess every single time. Okay, we are looking at round number 6 that happened yesterday. Now is 29th of March when I'm recording, and hopefully I'm going to upload the film in the next minutes, 1 hour or so, apart from the editing. And this is a game in which Magnus Carlsen won. It's worth mentioning that in the first round, Richard won versus Magnus, and Magnus blundered the full piece. Now in this game here, Magnus Carlsen does the payback, so to speak. It takes his revenge against Richard Rapport. And anyway, it's a beautiful Benoni with a very interesting trick and move number 11. And it's that kind of game that actually shows you how fully booked the Super Grandmasters are. They know in the tiniest minute detail the openings they play in any possible variation. These guys are giants of chess. So let's go with the d4 now. Magnus plays d4 in this game. Well, he could play whatever pawn he wants to. He'd still be fine, I guess. Himself and Richard. At least the opening, it's infallible. e6, knight f3, so developing of the pieces. c5, d5 takes space. So now we are going to moving with knight c3. A bunch of theoretical moves now, taking with the pawn. So we got a Benoni here. White enjoys a lot of space, especially the center. Notice how this d5 pawn takes the c6 square naturally from the knight, which would like to develop, but alas, it cannot. Now, it's not the end of the world. It's very much playable. g6. Finding ways to get a bishop. That bishop is a master of a bishop. White needs to be careful, and if possible to trade it, hey, try it. Now, h3 is very prophylactically being played here. And you may wonder, wait a second, can't I just push e4? Yes, of course you can play e4. That's not a problem. That's a theoretical book move. You can go with e4. But thing is, you would be expected some pinning to happening at some point. Mind you, black is a little bit cramped here. So they will be more than happy to get the bishop and then get knight b8 to d7 and stuff like this. So e4 would still presents black with the opportunity to pinning this guy on f3 at some point to the queen. That's for this particular reason, sometimes white decides to go knight f3 to d2 here, still trying to prevent and supports an e4 advancement. So Magnus now plays h3. And that plays another reason. We'll see this shortly enough, guys. So h3 now, obviously, demotivating any incursion of either bishop or knight on g4, but bishop normally wants to go there. e4, as we discussed, taking a lot of space, and castles. Black is secured with the king. Now, for black, it's important to decide what to do with the b8 knight and with the bishop on c8. Where do you get those guys? And you're going to find out very soon. Bishop e3, developing your pieces. So get those guys in action. Rook to e8, always important. This principle of chess, move your rooks on open or semi-open files. You need to make it a habit. If nothing presents as a threat, just get those rooks on open files because they are very important. In our position, you can notice there is a pressure on the e4 pawn. Very important. Now Magnus plays knight f3 to d2. a6. Now, when a6 happens, you always need to remember that actually black seriously wants to expand with a move like b5 and potentially at some point coming down and attacking your c3 knight. So sending that knight in this array, and thus you will be losing the support for the e4 pawn. So you need to play anticipatory, understanding black's idea, and just a4 stops it. Now, they can't do they can't do this move because you're just simply going to take. Pawn is being pinned. You're going to win the rook. So they can't move b5. Now, and this is move number 11. And we've got to understand a little bit of a subtlety here. The move knight takes e4. Looks like, wait a minute, why would black do that? In the Benoni, what's the thing? I mean, white attacks it twice, right? Well, probably you've noticed, guys, the bishop is pinned by the king to the king by the black rook. So when we said rook f to e8, we also meant this kind of pin on the bishop, which is on e3. So if you say now, okay, you could take it and you should take it, as Magnus did take, but after the move f5, which must be played automatically directly by black, also notice how dangerous this bishop is cruising g7 to b to a1 respectively. Do not go back with knight on c3. That would be a blunder. You're going to have to face f4, enormous pressure on the pinned bishop. There is queen to h4, enormous powerfully attack here. Your king is so exposed. You need to spend the tempo getting this bishop somewhere in order for you to dream of castling. So that's an important idea. If you ever decide to play this variation in the Benoni, remember, after f5, play like Magnus and do, for instance, bishop e2. You could fantasize about some knight d4 ideas, but knight d6, because maybe you might be thinking, well, they took a piece. I'm giving them my piece, but I'm taking something back. Don't do this. It's just enormous pressure for your pieces here on this diagonal. You may not want to do this. So play bishop e2, king safety. Do not leave your king in the middle forever. You can't do this. So let them take the knight. Play knight to c4 now. Which knight to c4 does a couple of things. Amongst them, protects b2. Incredibly important. Knight on c4. Not just pressure on d6, pressure on b6, attacking here, and nice and beautiful and all, but also protects b2. Very important, because that bishop is ravaging. a5 now being played. Bishop f4 by Magnus. It's not to say that castle short would be a mistake or any other ideas. Queen b3 would be bad, but bishop to f4. Double pressure on the d6 black pawn here. Bishop f8. Now that bishop, so that's a little bit of a small success tactically for white, because they managed to drive a bishop, otherwise an incredibly attacking bishop, back to f8 on the back rank to defend. If you manage to play a sequence after which your opponent is being forced to get his pieces back to on the back rank, defending stuff, it's a small victory, but it matters, because you transform those pieces from active, attacking, challenging pieces into idle, defensive pieces. So that's just another idea to keep in mind, my friends. And now a very direct Taliesk move with rook a3. And you may wonder, what on earth does that thing has to do with anything? You may inquire. But probably, especially those of you that watched the game live yesterday, or maybe visited my stream, you never know. Thank you for that. Rook a3, guys, means something very important in terms of tactically attacking black. And just contemplate the position. It's a bit of an advantage for white here. Look at the black pieces in all honesty, and notice, please, how all the black pieces are on the back rank, just to giving you a picture. It doesn't mean black is already, has lost already or something. No, this is just move 16. It is very playable. They will be reaching an equal position, but just to give you a flavor of what it means. And white already has 1, 2, 3, and the fourth piece ready to move. You've got it to the G file. Why? Because on the G file is where the king is. And you've got your secret weapon, which is the H pawn, ready to march on and challenge the G6 pawn. So that's to keep in mind. So now black has to develop stuff. And fortunately for this guy here on E6, they've got an excellent outpost, the B4 square. Very important to understand. And again, finally, do not forget, get that king away from the E file, okay? Because you don't want to keep the king in the middle. So still do not neglect your king safety. Knight b4, queen to d2, and that's a recurrent theme. It'll be happening when you're playing with white versus black. They do the Sicilian, you do the Yugoslav attack. You will always have this kind of idea. That might be aiming either on g5, either h6, depends where the scenario requires you to place your bishop. This battery is always, it's perennial efficient. It is always incredibly effective to realize queen d2 together, teaming up with the bishop on f4. They always make a formidable battery together. b6 being played. Probably they were dreaming, or maybe, the bishop, this guy really, where does the bishop on c8 go to? So maybe b6 wants to say, hey, dude, I might be willing to play this kind of stuff, although that's not going to happen. Rook to g3 now plays. As we said, pressure on the file where the king is. So black king is a bit naked. Black king is actually more vulnerable than the white king. The white king is safer, okay? The black king is not that safe. Now, believe it or not, at this stage now, check it with your own engines. The evaluation says a very blunt 0.00. But frankly, from a psychological point of view, white calls the shots, does the attacking, and poses threats here. So black is not losing by any means, but you got to play this stuff really, really surgically. And we're going to see all sorts of pressure are going to happen. Rook to a7 now. One of those moves that actually Rook wants to play to come into the king's support, just in case something happens to get open, namely the G file. H4 by Magnus. And during the live stream, I was actually mentioning pretty much quite a few times I said about this, exactly this idea as I'm telling you for these recorded video, guys. Rook to f7. Bishop to g5. That's not to say h5 is not playable here. Of course it is. Of course it is. But Magnus goes for bishop g5, which is a very good move. It does attack the queen. It does attack the queen. And the poor bishop that was on f8, g7, travel back f8, now e7, a little bit painful. Bishop e7, bishop takes. And I was telling during the stream, wait a second, Magnus is like, Richard Rapport is forced to take back with either of the two black rooks. Because if he moves the queen, he drops the b6. And I was surprised to see that actually he did take with the queen. But Magnus didn't go for the b6 pawn with the knight on c4, which, by the way, is not a bad move. Is not. He goes a little bit more attacking the king. So he likes to attack more than anything, which is good. We should play exactly the same. Bishop to g4 now. Trying to remove the defender of g6. Anyway, you didn't do a great deal with your bishop on e2 regardless. So rook takes g4. Still, please notice the amount of pressure on the G file. And now, out of probably a little bit of a panicking, he said, oh boy, I can't leave my king like this. I have to play rook g7, which is not the greatest move. The greatest move here, the best move would be here for black. By the way, if you ever play this, it's a meager 0.35 here. So it's quite playable for black. Doesn't mean you're going to lose or something. Just don't do the stuff that Richard played here. That is rook g7. He probably feared to get the king here or something. I mean, he probably thought, look, there's just too much. It's just too much. These things are going to open up. I can't do this. So he said probably to himself, oh, I'm going to play rook g7. At least I'm opposing the white rook on the g. And now Magnus moves his own rook over to the e file, which, by the way, this is the black queen. You've got one hitter, two hitters, two attackers on e4. And that's a thing. He should be moving the queen away. And now things are going to go down very quickly because he miscalculated Richard Rapport and he thought he going to trade the queen for two rooks. He said, well, I think I can do a nice game. But he missed a couple of other tactics down the road. And also worth mentioning, there were a few minutes on the clock, if I remember exactly. Rook takes now. Queen is going to disappear, the black queen, of course. Black queen takes, and takes. And now Magnus is going to apply a couple of fantastic tactic ideas. Takes on d6, attacking the rook. Rook goes to attack on d5, supported by the knight. He thought, hey, I'm going to play a fork for this guy. That's what he thought. That's what I thought. And during the stream, I said, what is Magnus cooking here? I mean, what is he doing? Magnus played very confidently a move like f4, and you would say, this is nuts. You just can't do this. They're going to fork you, man. That's what I said during the stream. I was very, very excited, and I couldn't believe it. Richard Rapport also didn't notice that after queen e2, you cannot take the white knight. You can't touch it. I think there was a song in the 90s by a rapper, MC Hammer, Can't Touch This. You can't touch the knight on d6. That's not to say I was listening to much rap. I was always into the rock metal phenomena. But just saying, I just remember that thing. So you can't touch the white knight on d6. And probably you noticed why. Because if you touch it, there is always the queen here. Threatening back rank checkmate. Absolutely disaster. I mean, I said, whoa, boy, oh boy, oh boy. h6, it's just desperation. It's just... And queen to e6. And Richard couldn't take no more. And he said, heck with this. I'm just going to resign. Just forget about it. It's just too much. I mean, even if king to h7, you've got knight to e8 here, and this guy's attack. They have to move. His checks coming from all directions. So, by the way, Richard resigned, but just giving you a flavor. If this were to continue, it's just too much of an attack. I don't know what you want to do. Rook d1 would mean nothing. It's just a bluff. You're going to go nicely shielded here from everything. This guy is under. You can't even say you want to attack here with the rooks because the knight would remove the g7 black rook in an instant. There is no good moves at this stage. Black is simply losing too much attacking power from the knight, from the queen. If you want to throw in a pawn, that's just too much for black to cope with. Therefore, they resign. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this short video. I don't know how many minutes I've spoken today. And join my live streams. Subscribe to my YouTube, to my Twitch, pretty much all the, I mean, those two in particular, perhaps even Facebook. And I'm going to multi-stream, multicast, and hopefully, guys, I'm going to discuss with you live the superb games played by these giants of chess. Today, we've seen Magnus Carlsen and Rapport. Thank you for watching, guys. I'll see you soon.